Good afternoon, grade 10. This is take 3. I guess I can't get through all 3 chapters in 15 minutes. There's just no way. All right, so I'm just going to get into the chapter summaries here. And so I'm going to get back to, there we go. So I'm just going to highlight here, and then if you have any questions, please let me know, because I can't go into great detail on it. All right, quit yapping here. All right, so the big one here is for chapter 7, we have Andersen telling Graf to ease up on the kids, possible empathy, sympathy. Graf doesn't treat children like children. It's more seeing each child as a historical figure or a replica of one, and then you manipulates it accordingly like a chessboard. Okay. He's promoted to salamander army, but Bonzo does not like that. And the other big factor is that Endor does not know how to live like a kid. He's never done childlike games or things like that. So socially and emotionally, he's been bred to be a soldier. There's no child behavior at all. So Bonzo plans to trade Endor as soon as possible, and Endor hopes for that as well. Petra is introduced, and we find out that Petra sees a lot of potential in Endor, and tries to teach him that they're not to focus or see everybody as enemies, but as allies. Or be able to differentiate between what an ally is and what an enemy is, and that if you utilize the allies, it's probably even more beneficial with your success than always seeking out all your enemies and destroying them and so on and so forth. So she teaches him to see alternatives in all things. Endor tries to manipulate Bonzo, just like Bonzo's trying to manipulate Endor. Backfires for Bonzo, and because it actually helps elevate Endor's status in battle school. And it also allows Endor to watch, listen, learn, observe before interacting or reacting, because then that'll help with his manipulation as well, and then also develop his skills on creating allies instead of enemies all the time. And so then he gets traded to Rat Army, and Bonzo sends him a little message with a shot in the arm, and Endor says, I'm not going to let that happen again. So you got one on me, and so you're not going to do that again. And very similar or reminiscent of the Stilson case. Number 8. Graf is still expecting to have Endor command. It's planning the team eventually that he will command, so foreshadowing here. So of all the kids that are in battle school, Graf is taking certain kids that are going to benefit Endor, where Endor can utilize these kids and become a force to be reckoned with. Andersen questions the International Fleet's method. He threatens to report Graf's treatment of Endor and kids. But that doesn't stop Graf. He keeps going, but he is walking a very fine line. We're introduced to Dink, and he's a character that views the adults as enemies, and so he's going to keep playing the game no matter what, and as long as, because he loves the game for one thing, but it allows him to defeat the enemy, which are the adults. And we find out that Bonzo hates Endor and wants to kill Endor. And this is important here. Endor learning the game is actually trivial overall. So it's just a small part of what really matters. The whole world itself is more important than the game. And so I know some of you play your video games and you enjoy them and all that kind of stuff. But that's just a small portion of your life, because there's a whole world out there that you will be interacting with, working in, and living in, and so on and so forth. And the games are come second to that. Endor is forced to defend himself, and it looks to be another Stilson incident, or it's if things continue on the path that they are. And the computer game, the Giant's Drink, as he continues to move up the ranks in the game, he sees a reflection of Peter where it should be a reflection of Endor. And but we find out that Endor is the killer only better than Peter, but he's seeing Peter, and this really throws the powers that be for a loop, wondering how did Peter's image get into the game. Okay, and the same would be for Valentine. We'll find out that Valentine's image gets in the game too. So it's the game being hacked. That's the big thing here, and that's the beginning of chapter 9, Locke and Demontheses. Valentine has not forgotten Endor, but the rest of the family pretty much have, or has, and they're probably forgetting about Endor so that they can keep their status in society. Because Graf did warn them that when he came to pick up Endor to take him to battle school, that you know who controls things. So it's like freedom over security, right? So in order to keep their security, they got to give up a lot of their freedoms and also maybe connections as well. And I talked about that with Eli having to give up his religious connections, his dad and mom as well. And but Endor has memories of his mom sharing some religious connections with him. He doesn't understand what it is because it's no longer a part of that society's culture or identity. It's something from the past that used to be done. Okay, Peter is a manipulator, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of character. So is Val and Endor. They switch back and forth. They know how to do it. And that's part of that manipulation as well. Peter figures the power of the international fleet will disappear when the buggers are defeated, which is historically where we've had the rise of a empire, and then it falls, and then there's another group that takes over, and then they rise, and then they fall, and so history repeats itself. Peter says history has patterns based on human behavior and interaction. So if you look at historical events, and especially when you look at History 20, if you take History 20, you will see a lot of examples where there's a pattern taking place based on behavior and interactions. And the right words can change the world at the right place and at the right time. Have you ever had somebody say, like you said something to somebody, words of encouragement, that kind of stuff, and then the person responds saying, oh, I really needed to hear that. You made my day, that kind of thing. Or you share a success story of yours, and it helps somebody else out because they know there's hope and things like that. Well, same thing here. And Val and Peter, they want to use the right words to change the world. And since Endor is going to be changing the world up in space, Val and Peter are going to try to change it here on the planet Earth. Peter wants full citizen access to the internet, uses different identities to discuss and share identities. We've seen the right words used to rise to power. Hitler did it. Caesar did it. Lots of different examples. And if you have a military support in place, that helps solidify the power. Val and Peter gain access to the internet, and they write articles that help them gain respect in that environment. And they choose the right words to encourage debate and discussion, just like you would on social media. They don't speak like kids. They speak like adults have been going to, that have vast, strong educational background, knowledge, that kind of stuff. Peter becomes Locke, Valentine becomes Demosthenes, and that's called pseudonyms or aliases. And so their game is to write to win, where Ender's game is to fight to win. Graf wants Valentine to help figure out why Ender is acting the way he is, and so on and so forth. And he wants to deal with this privately, not publicly, because if it goes publicly, it becomes an official matter, and he's already walking a fine line. Valentine writes to Ender, but it's cryptic. She can't say too much. And when Ender reads it for the first time, it sounds like something that the International Fleet would write. So he figures that Valentine has become one of them and the enemy. So now the only hope is to just do what the International Fleet wants. But in the end, especially after playing the game again, he sees Valentine's essence and knows wherever he goes and whatever he does, Valentine's going to be there. And Valentine realizes that she's been played by the International Fleet because the way the email was written. So she writes a public scathing of governmental policies and makes a subtle reference to Ender by stating this title of the third is a noble title, better than any other child out there. And this is where we would watch Star Trek Enterprise Borderland and talk about genetic engineering. So that was kind of fast. I apologize for that, but time-wise, this is my third attempt at it. So if you have any questions about 7, 8, 9, please let me know. All right, and you should be starting your projects pretty much around now because we're at the halfway point of the novel. Take care and be safe.